Let's create handmade resin bracelets using everyday crafting materials right from your cupboard. As a resin crafter, you might have this classic cabochon mold, a ring mold, maybe a basic earring mold, or perhaps a crystal mold. Even if you don't have any mold, don't worry. Maybe you have some dried flowers, a bit of crafting wire, or even a feather. I'm also digging into my stash for some silver and copper foil, hexagonal glitter, caviar beads, chameleon and mica pigments, and alcohol inks. Rakhi is literally tomorrow, and if you haven't bought a generic Rakhi yet, don't panic. Whether you want a classic tie Rakhi or a modern bracelet, let me show you 7 incredibly unique resin art projects you can make with UV and epoxy resin. Happy Rakhi everyone, let's get crafting. Our first design uses a cabochon mold. You can pick any of these geometric shapes, but I'm going to work on this squarish one in 3 sizes. I will tint this epoxy mix with just 1 drop of alcohol ink and keep the resin as translucent as possible. Because this is a relatively deep mold, I'm working with epoxy resin to avoid the seam lines that come from building a piece like this with UV resin. I'm also casting a few of these smaller shapes at the same time. These will come in incredibly handy when we assemble the bracelet later. Our main resin cabochons are now ready, but before we demold, I want to add a little bling to the back. A cabochon works like a lens, so it needs a gorgeous background to magnify. To create that depth, I'm going to add silver foil to a thin bed of epoxy and let it cure overnight. Now look at that effect. Just that texture in combination with the cabochon magnification looks fantastic. I will be modifying these eye pins by adding another loop and bending them in the middle so they fit the shape of our resin cabochons better. Then fixing them in place with UV resin. Finally, a clear coat of UV resin to seal the back. And these wonderful blue resin cabochons are ready to be assembled into a bracelet. This next design is bound to be a favorite simply because we are using a real dried daisy which can be transformed into a stunning Rakhi centerpiece very easily. All we need to do is brush it entirely with a thin layer of UV resin to give it some structure and stability. Once the base coat is cured, we will build up the front in careful layers to achieve that gorgeous glossy bulbous look on each petal. With the front completely dome sealed, we'll seal the back. The next step is attaching these acrylic bales to the back with UV resin. Being transparent, they complete the structural requirement of a bracelet medallion without taking away too much attention. Finally, let's seal the entire piece with one final coat of UV resin to make it ready for assembly. For this centerpiece, let's use coppery foil in epoxy resin and use the largest ring from this mold to shape our design. I broke the foil into small pieces while mixing the resin because the mold cavity was quite narrow. Even then, the resin put up a fight, but I was able to guide most of it into the ring. I was planning to cast only one ring, but things happened. I swiped the overflow, cast the smaller size as well, and set it aside to cure overnight. I am very happy with this casting. The foil is evenly distributed and the ring is bubble free. I had initially planned to use one ring like a bezel, but now that I have two, I will layer them and play with the geometry. The pieces need a little cleanup before our next step, which required a base. So I took a cardboard, mounted some heat resistant tape on it, and then secured our rings to it. I made sure there was no air gap because this was a delicate fill and any leakage would ruin the design. I'm going to fill the crescent formed by the two rings with this chameleon pigment. It complements the coppery rings beautifully. First, I carefully line the corners and the edges of the tape and the ring to eliminate the chance of bubbles before filling it up drop by drop, making sure I didn't accidentally fill the center. This is looking very unusual and dramatic. The crescent is very subtly locked in place by the two textured rings. This is a brilliant monochromatic design. The back will need to be sanded before the finishing coat. After leveling the back, I decided to sand the front as well. It just makes for foolproof doming. Now we need a way for the medallion to connect with the cord. I will fashion eyelets from these copper jump rings to match the color scheme. Once the eyelets have been attached to the centerpiece with UV resin, it will be ready for assembly. Let's prep the resin for our fourth design. It is a 1:1 resin mix colored by alcohol ink for a simple no-frill casting. After making sure the resin mixture is completely bubble-free, I'll pour it slowly into the mold and let it cure overnight. Oh, look at that! The dark blue was a great choice for this casting. Now the back edge just needs a little quick sanding to even out the lip and make it perfectly smooth. I'm gunning for a minimal monochromatic rakhi, so I have decided to skip any additional jewelry findings and just drill a couple of holes sideways directly through the resin piece itself. The drilled passage looks whitish. I'll apply some UV resin to smoothen it and restore its transparency. And that's it. It is that simple. It looks brilliant and it's ready to be assembled. Now, if you really wanted to show off your resin skills, you can make a delicate wire and UV resin flower. It's surprisingly simple to do, though it does take a little patience. I'm going to shape the outer petals using this pen cap as a mandrel, and the smaller inner petals using the pen itself. Then I'll gently bend the wires to give the petals a more dynamic, lifelike curve. The petals are prepared, sized differently for the outer and inner layers. Now for the fun part. I want a rich reddish tone for this bloom, so I'm going to mix a drop of alcohol ink into the UV resin. Once it's completely bubble-free, I'll take a wired petal and dip it directly into the mix. As I pull it out, a thin film forms across the frame due to surface tension, and I'll immediately cure it under the lamp. It looks awesome. I'll repeat this for all the remaining petals. Once the base film is set, I'll dip the petals a second time to deepen the color, making sure to cure both sides thoroughly. A third and final dip concentrates a bit of extra resin right at the tips to give the petals some beautiful sculptural body. Next, our flower needs a few stamens. 3 should do perfectly. For the tips, I'm using tiny caviar beads. I'll secure a bead to the top of each wire, dip it once into the resin mix, and cure it to give a stunning glowing aura. With all our components ready, let's bend these petals at their base before assembling the flower whorl by whorl. I'm using a jump ring as a central guide and anchoring everything into a foam base, which makes handling these fine wires with gloved hands so much easier. I'll bend the stems and arrange the layers, adjusting the angles as I go. A quick dab of UV resin right at the center locks everything securely in place. To finish the medallion, we need a flat, comfortable back. I'll trim away the excess stem wires and smoothen out the base using a bit of our leftover tinted resin mix. Finally, I'll attach 2 jump rings to the sides to act as anchors for the bracelet cord. This piece is absolutely gorgeous and I can't wait to see it fully assembled. I have this peacock feather, and as you can see, even though it's a little weathered around the edges, the center is still absolutely brilliant and the natural color shift is gorgeous. To transform this into a Rakhi medallion, I need to secure it first so that the delicate strands don't fly around. I'll stick it down onto some heat-resistant tape and work the strands to prevent bunching and overlap. Then I use the bottom of this mixing container as a stencil to trace a guide on the feather with a silver marker. Next, let's seal this feather with UV resin. I'm brushing the resin directly into the fibers to remove as many air pockets as possible. After curing the front, it's vital to flip it over and cure the back too, as UV resin can sometimes remain tacky in shadowed areas. Now that our base is stiff and ready, we can shape it. I'll just cut inside the outline I drew earlier. This perfect circle is a bit too stiff for this feather. Let's modify this shape by trimming a little off from the sides to make the silhouette mimic the natural teardrop form better suited to this peacock feather. I will be filling these tiny air pockets with a little UV resin before moving on. This medallion is noticeably larger than our other designs, but anything smaller simply wouldn't have done justice to the brilliant eye of this feather. To finish, I'll drill holes on the sides for the cord and then dome the front piece with some epoxy resin for body. Once the front is fully cured and looking fantastic, we'll coat the back as well. I sanded down parts of the medallion where bits of the feather were sticking out to prep this piece for the final top coat with UV resin. This is gorgeous and ready for assembly. I'm going to mix in my absolute favorite hexagonal glitter. I'm always looking for an excuse to use this specific glitter because the sparkle is just unmatched. For this design, we are using an earring mold. Honestly, any shape will do, but let's go with this geometric rhombus piece. The mix is looking a little sparse at first glance, so I'll add a little more glitter to give the medallion real visual weight before letting it cure overnight. The main piece is ready, along with these two accent pieces. And oh, look at that color shift. I told you this glitter was awesome. Now, the cast piece only has one pre-molded hole, but we need two for a bracelet. So let's drill another one on the opposite side. While I'm at it, I'll also widen the existing opening slightly to make it much easier for our jump rings later on. To seal the back, I'm adding a little purple mica to the resin. While this could have been left clear, the purpose becomes much more obvious with these matching pair of earrings. Because you can see both sides, it creates a beautiful distinction between the front and the back of the piece. For a final touch, let's soften this edgy geometric shape with a glossy clear doming top coat. Now we'll let this cure for just one final day. The cured pieces are so brilliant. Total disco. These pieces will make a cool earring pair to go with the bracelet. We've just crafted a resin rainbow of designs, each with its own unique form and vibe. We've experimented with a variety of generic molds, as well as freeform resin crafting. These gorgeous organic and geometric experiments are now ready, waiting to be assembled into Rakhi bracelets. The simplest way to make this into a Rakhi is simply use some thread. Bunch it together to give it some weight and cut it into the required length. Then we simply loop it through the jump ring and tie it up with a simple knot. Finally, we trim the ends of the ties. This jewel centerpiece will also use thread to keep the design minimal and unbroken by the shine of jewelry findings. If you find that the previous technique might result in tangled threads, then you can braid it lightly, like so, and then tie it at the end. I like this subtle detailing and is fantastic for when you don't want to use jewelry findings and want to keep the attention on the central resin piece. Any flexible cord used to make fashion jewelry will also do, like this 4 suede strip. You will need jewelry findings to attach the cord to the centerpiece, and your tie bracelet is ready. Another great option is using a metallic chain that matches your resin art. Keeping all the jewelry accessories and chains in identical finish creates a very elegant look for your bracelet. I didn't have an extended chain in matching finish, so I fashioned one from jump rings. I will use the same approach to assemble this peacock piece. Bronze is such a perfect fit here. I don't have a matching chain or cord that looks quite right, so I'm using an extended chain to put it together and give it some extra length. By only using findings, we have put this gorgeous earthy bracelet together. I want a cascading effect for this piece. The plan is to arrange the resin charms in a graduated layout, flanking the larger centerpiece with smaller versions on each side. There is no need for a chain or a cord in this assembly as well, just jewelry findings in silver finish. Finally, for our happiest Rakhi, we are going to use a cord, but we are going to be assembling it like a bracelet using jewelry findings in gold finish. This cheerful bracelet says, "Our time together makes me happy, like summer sunshine," while this peacock medallion represents the brilliant, vibrant colors of my heart. This sharp diamond piece reminds them that you are my light, while this shimmering crystal medallion says, "You are as precious to me as a rare jewel." This translucent cabochon, which says, "My love for you is vast like the ocean," while this sleek coppery ring says, "You are my world." Finally, this delicate resin flower is a quiet wish for eternal happiness and peace. Today, Rakhis are exchanged between people who support and care for each other, whether they are friends, family, or even a mentor. These handmade bracelets make for a thoughtful, unexpected surprise that the special people in your life are bound to cherish. If you are craving a more traditional look, I've got you covered. My 7 Rakhi designs and essential assembly techniques are linked in the description below. I hope one or more of these ideas inspires you on your own resin journey. Which design called to you the most? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.